Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So we got the UDIRC Panther and a whole bunch of AliExpress little aluminium arms and hubs for the front and rear. So let's see how successful we're going to be at getting these bits fitted. So just looking at it quickly, let's try and see if we can work out which are which. Are these the front? I believe they are. So it looks like we've got a pair of front arms. So it looks like they're going to go on front. They've got the little tabs on them. So I'm guessing the rear arms, possibly them. They've got the shock mounts on them. So it'd be interesting to see which ones of these fit. And then we've got forearms with the little olives already pressed in them. I'm just trying to see if there's any difference between any of these. So the only difference is where the chamfer is on them. So looking at it then, it looks like we're going to have one in that position. It's going to be interesting. One in that position. Now it's just this little chamfered edge that's different on them. So that would be one there, and the final one for the front. What about the hubs? They should be pretty self-explanatory. So I think we got one there and one there, so they come with them screws. All the arms come with these little silver screws, or long silver screws. And then as front hubs, come with 4 of these little tapered ones. So it looks like that's kind of the layout of which way they're gonna go. Just trying to see if I can work out which way round the hubs go, depending on this sort of little lump on them. So it looks like that goes down. So I think they're going to be that way round. So I'll pop a picture up somewhere around here of the layout of how we've got these, because I believe that's the way they go. There's no instructions with these, as most of these parts. I have ordered another little anodized rear one, and also with the that one that we didn't use, it might be handy to lift the body shell up. So it's going to be handy to have a pair of them, and then also they will fit with other body shells. So let's crack on with seeing if we can disassemble this and then reassemble it and it'll still work. Let's get you in for a closer look. Right, so just looking at it quickly, I think possibly the first thing we're better off doing is getting these wheels off so we can actually get to the hubs and everything. So we'll get us 4 wheels off. Then as 4 little wheel hexes, little brake discs, they just pull off. Then you've got the tiny little drive pins. You're just going to have to poke them out. They're quite easy to remove. Just make sure you don't lose them. Let's remove the rear ones. So I think if we start by removing the rear shocks, just get them off. So we've got a screw holding the top of the arms on. It definitely feels like this top arm that I'm undoing now was binding up slightly. So that's definitely not going to be helping us as suspension any. So once we've got them out, we can remove as drive shafts. We'll need these little ball adapters out, else we'll have nothing to fasten as shocks to. So let's see if you can see them. And then we're going to want to knock our bearings out. So you've got a little one in the front. So we'll pop that into the front of his new bearing carriers or hubs. So that's at least got them safe. And we'll get the rear bearings out. So you can push them from rear once you've prised them up a little. And then drop them into his new hubs. Let's see if we can get the other side out. A bit of prising and they come out. So, next thing we're going to want to do is we've got to get the hinge pin out. We've got two on the bottom. So if we're careful and we just bring that away, then we can get the holder off the back. So if we just slide them out and then put the pin back in place. So all we need to do now is copy what we've got here. They do look pretty similar. So we want one arm fitting to either side. That'll get them in position. Then we can drop as hinge pin retainer back on. And then once we've got that back on, should be able to slide this cover back. So if we flip it over and get these two screws back in, and then we'll not end up with too many millions of screws everywhere. So we can move them to one side. So next thing, now we've got it all held in place, I'm going to put the two little shock ball joints in. So we've got these back on. Now we're going to have to see what holds us hubs together. So are we going to need us screws from the hubs? I take it uses the stock ones. Let's remove this from the stock hub. We should be able to screw these together. Well, they don't screw all the way in, but they do screw in enough to hold it. But basically, yeah, it looks like it's just not, the threads aren't drilled quite as deep. But it shouldn't make any difference whatsoever to how it works. It is just acting as a hinge pin. And then we're using the standard screws to hold these in. So the rears, we got these little black screws. out through the olives. So looks like on the pivot side you can either use the stock screws, so the stock screw will fit, but we also got a new silver screw, so let's see if these fit any better. They'll definitely screw down better, but that suspension is pretty much unusable. So we're definitely going to have to do some work on that, and it looks like it lines up fine. Let's see if we can get these to fit. Yeah, they're pretty tight fit. So I think looking at it, what I'm probably going to end up doing is filing the little plastic down a bit. So I certainly think either the plastic is going to need filing down, or the actual suspension arm is going to need a bit of sanding. Let's see what these are like. Yeah, they're usable, but not great. So let's get the drive shafts and everything fitted back in. The geometry is right, they're just not a brilliant fit. So we can now just drop the drive shafts in. Make sure you've got your inner and outer bearings on. And I wasn't exactly expecting miracles with these aluminium parts, because the stock plastic parts bind up like crazy. And I think looking at it, I think the main culprit is this. It's too wide. So even for the stock suspension, it wants cutting down a bit or shaving down. So should be able to pop the suspension back on. Well, maybe it'll wear in over time. I mean, they certainly look the part, so it really wouldn't take much to get them to work perfect. Now, if they were a crazy expensive part, I'd probably say I'm not that impressed, but literally they are absolutely for nothing. So we'll pop a wheel back on. Well, they don't bind up on wheels, so just drop the pin through and then the hex on. Yeah, they don't bind up. That's awesome suspension. I would definitely file down the inners of these and the black part on the hub. Right, so we've got the two pins that we're not using out of it. So let's crack on with the front one. So I think first things first, let's get the suspension off. So we'll get the shocks out of the way. And you can just shove the screwdriver down and pop them off, and then just twist the tops. Then we're going to flip it over. It looks like it's got 3 screws on the bottom of this one. So a short one in the middle, then 2 longer ones. It looks like that's going to be enough to get the whole front bumper off and both hinge pins. And we've got us little hinge pin retainer. So then we can drop our drive shafts out. See if we can get that hinge pin to come away. Right, so see, it's definitely these what's causing the problem, because even the stock ones don't work. And stock, this screw's almost screwed out as well. So it's definitely these that are causing its problem. But let's get the little ball joints screwed off at ups. Definitely be worthwhile getting some sandpaper on these and just taking them back a bit. I'm just seeing if I can cut a little bit away with Stanley knife. So, right, what do we need first? We need a hinge pin. So we want a hinge pin through, and then we want the shock sort of screw position facing forward. Let's get these shoved into the hinge pin retainer. And we're going to want as other arm, so you're going to want it that way round with a pin through. So we want this one in that way, and we're going to want this hinge pin retainer on, and then we can slide this front bumper back on. And if we flip it upside down, we've got our short screw for the middle that wants going back. So, next we're going to want to assemble us hubs. Now each hub, you're going to want the bearings. So again, we're going to have to prise the bearings out of the original hubs. And I don't think there's any point me test fitting this suspension because it's going to work like utter garbage. So I'm just going to blast it all back together and we'll just see how bad it is. So we want the little shock standoffs. They need screwing back in. So we just need to drop the suspension down to get these in. The little ball joints for the shocks. Nice and easy to fit. Then your hubs want to be faced down on there. So you're going to want one little tiny screw. You want to put that through front bottom of olive. And just carefully tighten it up because they're very fine threads, very short screws. Then you should, yeah, it looks like everything lines up. So you want to drop a little bearing in back and drop a bearing in front, and then get your drive shafts. Should be able to pop that in, and then you can put your steering link on. Then we're going to get a top arm, so let's see which ones line up with this. So that'll line up perfect, and we've got the chamfer face down, so we'll go for one of the little tapered screws that come with hub. And then we'll go one of the silver screws that came with the actual arms. Now I've only shaved this down a tiny amount on this front diff housing, but this one certainly seems to fit a lot better than the rear, so I'm wondering if there's just little burrs on them that need taking off on the stock plastic. But that's certainly freer than the rear one. One little tapered screw in from bottom, then get us hub. But then again, we are using dirt cheap AliExpress bits, so anything's possible. Right, so big bearing, little bearing, throw a drive shaft through it, and then we just need to lift it up so we can get the drive cup in. Get a steering link on. Let's see if this one's going to bind up. And this is using the new silver screws that come with the AliExpress parts. So we got that on. Then we've got one more little tapered screw. Should be able to drop that through. So the steering feels quite nice. Just the top suspension arms. Weird that it's on the same side, because the left hand side feels fine on both. So we just need to pop the shocks back on. Not that they're gonna do a great deal until I have time to work on that, because I don't think these shocks will be able to push it back down. So once we're at this point, we've just got to drop the pin back through, get your little brake disc hex drive, drop the wheel on, and happy to see the wheels aren't binding at all, so that's nice. So we need us pin in. So, do they fit? Yes. Do they look nice? Yeah. And it looks like it's brought the ride height up a little bit, which I didn't expect. So the only part is these bits of plastic. They're the only part that you might have to file down, and I would advise filing them down. I mean, you can just run the RC, especially if you're running it off-road. It'll bash it about to the point where it'll loosen them off anyway. So it's not something that is completely unworkable, and it's not going to be of any use. but just something to be aware of. But yeah, they do fit, they do look bling. Now, has it took any slop out at steering? Not sure. But let's wrap this one up. So, conclusion time. Well, they look nice. They do kind of fit. They can be made to fit perfect with very little help. Just need a little bit of sanding on them. And for the price, if you like tinkering with RCs and you just want to make your little drift car look a bit different, then yeah, I think they're worth it. If you want a direct fit that's just going to bolt straight up to it, nah, don't buy the AliExpress parts. But in all fairness, the stock suspension, I had problems with it sticking right out of box, so I think it's just a UDIRC thing. They're not a bad little car. I kind of think even the brushless one is probably worth about 40 quid, not 90. I certainly wouldn't throw, I wouldn't advise anybody to throw 90 quid at one of these UDIRCs. They're a very cheap AliExpress car with a different brand put on them. I would probably shop around and just get any cheap AliExpress car because all the parts fit. And as I'm finding on this, with the stock suspension sticking, the stock steering being pretty naff, you're not getting any better quality control for paying a UK premium price on it. But that's just my take. Fun little car. Enjoying putting all these cheap AliExpress parts in it, seeing what will fit and what won't. But ultimately, I wouldn't waste 90 quid on one of these things. It drives awful compared to the cheaper AliExpress car that we tested it against. The steering's just far too vague on this. It turns more one way than other for some reason. I haven't found any reason for that. But yeah, it's a fun little car. I'd say they're probably worth 40 quid, not 90. But we shall keep modifying it and playing with it and messing around with it and see if we can eventually make it into a nice RC. They are fun, just don't think they're worth the money. But thanks for watching Wtf Rc Cars. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see if we do eventually make a good car out of this. And catch you guys again in the next one. Where are you?